Okay, thanks for coming. Let's start this session with our invited speaker, Roberto Marcondes Cesar Jr. It's a great pleasure to introduce the talk of Roberto here today, because I know him from a long time now, and it's a pleasure to do that. So Roberto is a full professor at the University of São Paulo since 2008. He has a major in computer science, master in electrical engineering. His major was from UNESP. His master was from UNICAMP, State University of Campinas. He got his PhD in physics from University of São Paulo, and he has worked on computer vision, pattern recognition, image processing since 1992 during his master, which I consider the best time for him, where he met his best friends. And then after that, after the PhD, he wrote a book on shape classification analysis, a very interesting book that we have used in some of our courses. And let me see what you have done. It's a long list of things that Roberto has been very active in the community, not only in SIBGRAPI, but also in international and national technical communities of several events and conferences and journals. He has also a lot of collaboration with people outside Brazil and inside Brazil. One example is Isabelle Bloch from Telecom Paritech. He has worked with her since 1997, and in Brazil he's been very active also in the national scenario and also at University of São Paulo. Okay, so he now is he's part of the computer science committee at FAPESP, and also the committee of CAPES that is responsible for the evaluation of the computer science programs in the Brazilian universities. At USP, he's a director of the e-science research center, which used to be research center in bioinformatics, right? So his interest has been extended to not only computer vision, pattern recognition, and image analysis and image processing, but also bioinformatics. And at the Institute of Mathematics and at USP, where he's a professor, he's also the head of the department and leader of the lab. He's the one who founded the lab in computer vision there, and I think these are some of the things. So his talk today will cover the topic of structural pattern analysis, and it's going to give us explain his work on image segmentation using graphs and how to exploit the relation among objects in images.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this nice introduction from Alexandre. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. My first SIBGRAPI was in 1989. Then it was 23 years ago when I was an undergraduate student. And I see here many of my good friends that I have been meeting during all these years. It's really a great pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about a kind of research topic I have been devoted for the last 12 years or something like this. And many people are involved in the results I'm going to show. It's a kind of summarization of the results we have been obtaining during these years. And I would like probably to be grateful for all these people and also for the university and the funding agencies that have helped me during these years. Then, as Alexandre mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about some graph-based models that we have been exploring in order to solve some specific problems for pattern recognition. I'm going to concentrate mainly on image segmentation, which is it's a nice topic to talk a little here in SIBGRAPI, but there are some other applications in case you are interested. Okay, here's an outline of the talk. I'm going to do a short introduction, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the model that we have been working. I'm going to concentrate a little bit on applying this model to interactive image segmentation, and then I'm going to show a little bit about some ongoing work with some new results. Okay, here's a little bit the outline of the approach we have been following. I suppose that, I suppose that there is something in the world that we want to analyze. There are many to analyze. It's a quite general idea. I mean, it may be classification, segmentation, anything like this. We have some sensors, some cameras, some tomography, or anything we can digitize the information. And typically in statistical pattern recognition, what we have is that we have descriptors that are extracted from such a representation. In structural pattern recognition, we suppose that the patterns we want to analyze, they may be decomposed in some way. That's the key idea. We may decompose the pattern that we want to analyze, then the problem to be solved should take this into account. I mean, the decomposition of the pattern into a certain number of some parts. This is the key point that we use in order to explore the approaches we have been using. Then we have the descriptors, but now the descriptors, they are some function of the parts, and then we have typically some classification tests to be solved. Here are some applications that we have been involved applying this kind of idea. This is the main application I'm going to focus today, interactive image segmentation. But then there is some other applications where the ideas I'm going to explain, they also may be applied. I mean, we can solve object detection problems, we can solve pattern matching, image matching problems like this. In this case, it's electrophoresis matching, image matching, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's see a little bit about the approach that I'm talking to you. I'd like to start with some kind of old story I typically use in this kind of talks. This is a kind of game that my daughter, she used to play with me. I mean, she used to play some 8 or 9 years ago. Now she doesn't see too much to play with it. But anyway, it's a nice way of introducing the approach. The game goes like this. She typically draws some objects of some parts of some object that she wants to create. Okay, and then here you see we have some eyes, some hair, some mouths, and things like this. And then the game goes like this. She starts asking me, please choose one hair, then choose the eyes, then choose the ears, and so on and so forth. At the end, what we have is the object that has been created by choosing a sequence of parts. That's the basic idea, and she loved to play this kind of game. And then we have the name of the object that is created, and so on and so forth. I like to show this because it highlights the idea that the final object that we have is actually a composition of different parts that we have chosen, but also, and this is quite important, is not just the sum of the parts, but there is an organization of the parts. And this is a key issue. Organizing those parts is a key issue in order to obtain the proper object. Because if we choose a wrong way of organizing them, then we would have something that we didn't expect. And these are the 2 points, the 2 key points that are in the heart of the approach that we have been following. how to treat the different parts and how to treat also the organization of the different parts. And this idea underlines everything that we do during these years. Then, supposing that we have this kind of situation where we have parts and relations, there is a number of tasks that are important to fulfill the process that we want to employ. I mean, we should be able to decompose the shapes, because now I'm interested in the other way around. I'm interested in the inverse problem, actually. Typically, we have the whole object, and we want to recognize or to segment or to do something like with it. And then we should do the process in the other direction. Then we should be able to decompose shapes. We should be able to characterize the different parts that we have found in the decomposition. We should also be able to measure the relations among the different parts, the different objects, different sub-objects that we have found. We should be able to represent all this information, I mean, the different parts and also the relations among the different parts and so on and so forth. And also, typically we have to match representations. These kind of ideas of processes have defined actually a kind of research agenda that me, my students, and some of my colleagues have been following for the last 12 years or something like this. And we have worked on each of these topics. It's nice because it's a kind of rich field where you can choose a little bit which kind of theory or theoretical approach of process or algorithm or data representation, etc. you want to solve in order you want to follow in order to try to solve the problems. This is more or less, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these and some results that we have obtained during our research. Please feel free just to raise your hand and to ask or to make comments during the talk. I suppose it would be much easier to follow. Okay, this is by no means my idea. Okay, this is actually these kind of ideas have been researched, that have been studied in literature for a long time. For instance, here we have one of the first works by Fischer and Eschlager, where they proposed in 1973 a kind of structural model of faces to be found in order to do face detection. And the idea was to decompose the face elements into a number of parts of objects. And the nice thing here in this work is that the relations among the different parts, they were already part of the study of the model they have proposed. That's why they put this kind of structures in order to show that the relations, they may be a kind of, there may be some variance in the different relations. I mean, there is some robustness, although the hair is in general up to above the eyes, etc. There may be difference, for instance, in the distances or the directions or something like this. Okay. It's interesting because sometimes we don't realize the importance of this kind of uncertainty in the description of the objects and how we use it. Let me give an example. Suppose I have forgotten a book in the room here, beside here, or something like this. Then I could ask, for instance, Alexandre to go to look for my book there. And I could use two different ways, maybe. So the first way would be to define some coordinate system in the room besides, and then to say to Alexandre, please go look for my book, which is at the position 3, 25, and 41 in the canonical basis defined by the upper left walls of the room or something like this. This would be a kind of quite precise way of defining where is the book. But a different way would be just to say to Alexandre, please go to the room beside here and go look for my book, which is above the table in the middle of the room. This is a kind of quite imprecise way of describing where is the book, but it's too much powerful than the first one, which is much more precise. And that's the basic idea behind exploring the different relations, spatial relations we may find in the parts and the objects we have, for instance, in scene recognition or something like this. These kind of ideas, as I mentioned, has been studied by people for some 40 years now or something like this. the literature, we may found a kind of many different works that have been analyzing some aspects of this approach I'm mentioning to you. For instance, we have the first work by Robert Ledley in 1964, where he proposed a kind of formal grammar in order to recognize chromosomes in biomedical images. Then we have a long line of different concepts, all of them concepts and algorithms, all of them based on these ideas, or where you have the objects, you have the different parts of the objects that compose that object, and then you have the different relations that organize those parts. Okay, you can find a kind of long way of studies during the last 40 years or something like this, devoted to some aspect of this problem. I'm going to skip the details. If you want, we can talk about the literature after. I'm going now to start discussing how we approach this problem and the basic model we have been following. Okay. In order to present it, although our approach, we think it's kind of abstract approach, maybe it's easier to think about some specific problem, and then I'm going to talk about the problem I'm addressing in the talk today, which is image segmentation. Okay. Suppose we have a model of some object that we want to recognize some different parts. For instance, we have a face, and we have the different parts that compose that face, okay? Then we have the nostrils, the mouth, the pupils, the eyebrows, etc., etc. And then suppose you have an input image where you want to recognize those parts, those different parts. That's the problem I'm going to discuss a little bit now. How to identify in some input image where are those elements that we want to identify, that we want to find based on some model. Then we have a model image, which is here with the different parts that we have, etc., etc. And then we have an input image where I want to identify those different elements. Okay. A possibility to solve this problem is to take the input object, the input pattern, and decompose it into a number of subparts in such a way that the elements that I want to identify, they are defined as the union of such subparts. For instance, here, we just have applied some watershed algorithm, and then we have an over-segmentation of the input image. And actually, each part we want to recognize in the based on the model, it may be identified here in the input image as a union of some watershed basins. Then, if I am able to identify which are the watershed regions that compose the mouth, and which are the watershed images that compose the pupils, etc., etc., I would be able to solve my problem. Then the idea here is how to find a mapping between this segmentation and this segmentation. Okay, that's the problem I'm going to show, to focus a little bit here in order to explain our approach. In order to solve this problem, what we do is to define a data structure in order to help us to solve this problem. Okay, we use attributed relational graphs in order to solve this problem. An attributed relational graph is a tuple like this. We have the nodes, just like the traditional nodes in a graph. We have the edges of the graph, and then we have feature vectors both for each node and in each edge. Then this is the basic structure we are going to explore in order to solve our problem. The input, either the model image or the input image, is then represented as a graph where each region in the input image is associated to a node. The relations between, the spatial relations between the regions is defined by the edges, and then we should be able to measure some attributes both from the parts and from the spatial relations. Okay? This is the basic data structure we use in order to solve our problem. Now, if I am able to do all these steps I have just explained, I mean, we have a model, we have an input image, we have some decomposition of both model and input image, and we have some ways of representing both both elements as graphs, as attributed graphs, what we have is that we have a graph that has been derived from the model and a graph that has been derived from the input image, okay? And now the idea is to identify which elements of the input image correspond to each element in the model image. Or in other words, I want to create a mapping between the input graph and the model graph. Because if I am able to create this mapping, I would be able to say, well, this part corresponds to the for instance, to the pupils, while this part corresponds to the mouth, etc., and so on and so forth. Okay. Then now I'm reducing my problem of identifying the input elements that we have in the input image as creating a map between two graphs. And of course, there are many different functions we can use in order to create these maps. We have isomorphisms, we have homomorphisms, we have inexact mappings, etc., etc. And each specific problem we want to solve may correspond to a different map we want to identify. Then sometimes we want to use isomorphisms, sometimes we want to use homomorphism, and so on and so forth. Okay? But the nice thing here is that we are creating a kind of mathematical infrastructure with kind of solid basis, because we can use everything that has been already obtained regarding theoretical results of graphs and mappings, etc., etc., in order to exploit and to solve the problem. The algorithms to do the mappings and so on and so forth. Oops, sorry. Okay. Of course, a problem we have here is that there are simply just too many solutions. Okay, we have actually this kind of the order of magnitude of the solutions is a function of the size of the model graph to the power of the input graph. Typically, for instance, if you want to see this in number, typically in our applications we have some hundreds of parts in the model graph and some thousands of parts in the input graph. Then we are talking about hundreds to the power of thousands. Okay, there was just simply too many solutions, and we have to solve this problem. And the way we do it is also by choosing a good mathematical way of looking for solutions based on optimizations. Then we have now to define two different things. We have to define some cost functions in order to distinguish which are good solutions and bad solutions. And once we have some good cost functions, we have to find some suitable optimization algorithm in order to optimize the function. Okay, and of course, again, we have many different ways of defining cost functions and defining and finding some suitable optimization algorithms. But that's not the nice aspect of our thing. I mean, there's a huge literature, and we can base ourselves in the literature in order to find a suitable solution. This is just an example of a cost function we have been using during these years, where we have actually a kind of weighted sum of the costs of matching the different nodes and the costs of matching the different graphs. Okay, this is just a typical equation we use in order to solve this problem. Now, let's see what we have up to now. Okay, we started with a model image and an input image to be recognized, to be classified. And we have a representation, a graph representation from the model image, a graph representation from the input image. And we have to define attributes for both graphs, and we have to define cost functions for matching nodes and for matching edges. Okay? And if we have all the things, and we have already defined the cost function and the optimization algorithm, it's just a matter of putting everything all together in order to see what we have as the final result. Okay? Here we have an important, it's a kind of tricky problem, but it's quite important problem in this situation. And it's just a mathematical problem that appears in many different approaches that follow these kind of ideas. The problem is that typically what we have is a huge difference in the topologies of both graphs. Because we are starting with the principle that we are decomposing the parts into a number of subparts. Then the union of parts, subparts here should correspond to parts here. this means that when I am comparing this node, for instance, suppose that this node is this node in the mouth, and this node is this node in the mouth in the model image. This means that I am comparing a small part of the mouth with a huge part, or maybe the whole mouth. There are some attributes that are suitable for this. For instance, maybe gray level is a good attribute, but there are other attributes which are not suitable at all. For instance, if I want to use the area or the perimeter or something like this, or some shape parameter, then we have to solve this problem. The difference in topologies in these graphs are due to this kind of approach that we have been defined. Well, what we have done in order to solve this problem is to propose an intermediary structure, which initially we called a deformation graph. I went this talk with a new solution we just started some 2 years ago or something like this, in order to solve a different way of solving this problem. But anyway, the first solution we came to in order to solve this problem is to create what we call a deformation graph. The deformation graph, the basic idea behind the deformation graph is that the deformation graph is a topological copy of the input graph. Then we have the same number of nodes and the same relations, the same edges. But the attributes of the deformation graph actually comes from the input graph. That's the basic idea. Why this is useful? Because if I am able to estimate the parameters in the deformation graph from the input graph, comparing those graphs would be much more easier, but much more natural, because then I would be comparing two structures which are topologically equivalent. Okay, they have been creating by definition like this, and we have explored this approach in some different applications, and it turns out that it works quite well. I'm going to show before coming to the cases of the case study that I'm going to focus today, which is the interactive image segmentation. I would like to talk a little bit about two problems that I haven't touched up to now. The first one is that we have to be able to decompose the input images, okay? Both the model image and the input unknown image. There are many different ways of doing this. We have explored some different ways. For instance, we have used pixels, quadtrees. There is a paper we have presented in SIBGRAPI some 5 years ago or something like this, using quadtrees. We have worked with meshes. For instance, this is a joint work with Luis Gustavo and other collaborators from USP São Carlos. We have, of course, used some different ways of defining the watersheds and so on and so forth. These are all typical manners of decomposing the input patterns into a number of subparts so that we are able to extract the graphs and then to find the solutions. Oops, sorry. And another important aspect that we have been working during all these years regards spatial relations. Okay, I talked to you about getting the input images, model and input unknown image, how to decompose them, how to extract features about them. Now I would like to talk a little bit about how to measure, how to define the relations between the parts. This is a kind of quite important issue in order to solve our problem. There are some different approaches in order to measure spatial relations between objects, but once we started working in this problem, what we saw is that typically many approaches, they are kind of simplistic in the way that they assumed some well-behaved idea or something like this regarding those parts. Then if I talk about some spatial relations, say above or below or something like this, although it's simple to define where, okay, the hair is above the eyes or something like this, typically in vision images, we have some situations where it turns out that such simplistic definitions, they just do not apply. I'm going to discuss two relations in detail in order to show to you that such simplistic solutions, they do not apply, and then we have to we need some new definitions and algorithms in order to measure them. Okay. Here are just some examples of typical spatial relations we may be interested in measuring from the images, okay? Distances, for instance, it's nice because we have just mathematical distances that may help us. Orientation, the direction of the different objects or something like this. And then we have linguistic relations like being above, below, between, etc., etc. When we start talking about such linguistic terms, it turns out that it's typically it's kind of in many ways difficult to capture what people mean about such terms. For instance, when we talk about between, okay, if I talk about I don't know, these objects, for instance, here is between these two objects. Okay, this is simple. But when we talk about, when we describe a face and we say that the nose is between the eyes, oh, it depends on what you are defining by the nose. Because if you just want to measure some distances or something like this, or define, and I'm going to show some good mathematical definitions or some natural mathematical definitions, it's really easy to find quickly some counter examples. And the research on this typically involves discussing these counter examples and trying to find some good solutions for them. Here, let me show an example of what I'm meaning. I'm trying to explain like this. For instance, let's talk about the spatial relation between. Okay, then I want to measure what is the space between two objects. Let's talk just about the simple case where we have two objects. Then, okay, we can talk about this situation here and say that B is between A1 and A2, okay? This is a kind of easy way of looking at this, and we can think quickly about solutions, for instance, by taking the convex rule of A1 and A2 minus the objects A1 and A2 and say, well, B is between A1 and A2 if B belongs to such set. Then it's easy, and it's easy to define and easy to calculate, because we can calculate the convex rule of the two objects, we can extract the two objects, and it's easy to calculate the intersection between B and this set. But if I say to you, if I talk to Luis Velho and or to Alexandre to meet me between, for instance, between the church and the bank or something like this, maybe they would expect me to be somewhere like here. But if I apply this definition to this situation here, it turns out that B also belongs to the same set. Because if I calculate the convex rule of these two subsets and extract the two objects, B belongs to the between region. But actually, I suppose Luis Velho or Alexandre would never expect me to be here in this region. They would expect probably me to be here in this region if I say that I would be between A1 and A2. This is the kind of tricky situation that we typically find when we talk about modeling linguistic spatial relations. Also, suppose that I'm talking about being between, I don't know, between the restaurant and the beach or something like this. Okay, if I'll be between the restaurant and the beach, maybe I would be here, not here. Although if I take the convex rule and minus the objects, etc., anywhere in this region here would be considered to be between. Okay. There is, for this situation, for the between, we have found a good definition. Actually, it was proposed by Rosenfeld and Klette some 25 years ago, and we don't know any counterexample for this definition. Then, if you find some counterexample, I would be glad to hear. Okay, the basic idea for this definition to define what is the between region, it goes like this: I am between two objects if I can see the two objects. That's the basic idea behind the method. Okay? If I am able to see both objects, then I would be between the two objects. That's the basic idea. That's what we call a visibility approach. And in order to define this, Rosenfeld and Klette in 1985, they define what they call admissible segments, which is basically segments of minimum length between points of the borders of the two objects, like this one, for instance. And if you take the union of such segments, you would have the between region. And this is nice because we would find, for instance, this region and also this region, and all this region here in this small part inside Z, not inside Z, but inside this region in Z, they will not belong to the between region so defined. Okay, then this is a good definition for the between term. And if anyone thinks about some counterexample, I would be glad to hear. I haven't known any counterexample. The problem with this definition is that it doesn't take into account kind of fuzzy relations, like where I am not exactly between, but I am near between. I am in this region, for instance. Okay. This region can take a look at and two objects, but they are not defined by the admissible segments. Well, in order to solve this problem, we have proposed some 6 years ago a kind of fuzzy definition of the region, where we are able to, where we define actually the between region as a function of the angles between some points that are spread over the space. And then if I am, for instance, in this region where the angle equals to P, I'm in a kind of maximal degree of betweenness. But if I am in this point here, I am also between to some extent. That's the basic idea behind our approach. Oops, sorry. We have proposed some different algorithms in order to solve this problem. We have contour-based algorithms, which are nice because they are fast to implement, etc. We have some algorithms that work also. Here's an example. I'm not going to explain into detail the algorithm, but in case you are interested, I may talk about it after, okay? But these are some examples of the algorithm working, where you have the two objects, the two kids, and the algorithm is able to find this region here, which is the region between the two objects. And it's nice because we have objects of arbitrary forms, or etc., etc., and even so we are able to find it. And it's a contour-based algorithm, which means that we can implement in a fast way. Okay. And how, where this kind of algorithm it may be applied, and why is it important? I'm going to show an application we have explored this algorithm. The basic idea is that if I am able to find the region between different objects, for instance, we have these two objects here, and the region between the objects are here, then I would be able to find objects between two objects. And it's nice to guide some different applications. For instance, what we have here is that we have some segmentation, fuzzy segmentation of brain structures in medical imaging. And once we are able to find the different regions between the objects, these are the two definitions that I just explained. This is the convex hull based, and this is the visibility based. Then, oops. We are able to implement segmentation algorithms that explore such spatial relations. For instance, this is the situation in medical imaging where people are interested in segmenting structures like the heart, for instance. Okay, what is the problem in identifying the heart in this image? The first problem is that the heart, it has a kind of typically it has many features that are similar to other structures in other parts of the images. For instance, the gray level here, the heart probably is just equal to other parts or in other regions of the image, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, if I know a priori that the heart is between the lung, then it's a nice way of modeling. It's a nice way of modeling the problem. Is firstly defining what is the region between the lungs automatically, and then to explore this information in order to segment the heart. Okay, then this is a typical application where the spatial relations may be applied, and here what we have is some typical results of the between region between lungs and other structures, and the object that we want to segment between them. Okay. Now I'm going to explain in detail how we have implemented these a typical application, a specific image segment, a specific image analysis problem, using the ideas that I have explained it up to now. Okay. The problem that we're interested in solving here, this is a joint work between Alexandre Noma, who is a former PhD student in our lab, and Beatriz, also a former PhD student in our lab, Consularo and Isabel Bloch. Okay? And the problem we are interested in solving here is to segment interactively some images. Okay? And I'm going to talk about different cases for image segmentation. Single image segmentation with 2 objects, single image segmentations with many objects, and multiple objects, and multiple objects in the image. Okay, this is also by no means something we have created. There is a huge literature for this problem. I'm showing some of the important methods that we may find in the literature: the watersheds, the AFT, the image forcing transforms, graph cuts, etc., etc. I hope to show you that our approach, our graph-based approach, it has some important advantages depending on the application you're interested in over the other methods. Okay. The basic idea behind these methods goes like this. Suppose we have an original image and we want to segment it into a number of parts. Okay. Then we'd like to have some user interaction in order to define the model. Now I'm start talking about how to create the model. And for this application, it's nice to have the user, the software user, to provide the model itself. Okay, and the model is created actually by using some scripts that are done that are created by the user, who is able to define what are the regions, the objects that he or she are interested in finding the images. Then we have the original image, the user interaction, and the image with the scripts, where the user said here, oh, this is the background, these are the pants, this is the torso, and so on and so forth. The basic idea behind the method is that we use these scribbles in order to define the model in such a way like this. Firstly, we apply the over-segmentation, some of the image decomposition methods. I have explained it, for instance, watershed or something like this. And then I am able to find the over-segmentation and the input graph defined by this. And we take the intersection between the scribbles defined by the user and the over-segmentation in order to derive a model graph. Okay? And the nice thing of this approach is that this model graph is actually a labeled graph where each node has a label associated to some region that has been created by the user. It's important to mention here, to highlight here, that we don't mind how many different scribbles or how many different regions of interest the object the user has. Okay. And then once we have the model graph and the input graph, I would be able to by matching those graphs using the previous approach, we'd be able to segment the object. I haven't talked too much about the optimization algorithm. There are many different approaches. Okay, we can use stochastic algorithms, we can use deterministic algorithms. There is a huge literature on these. For instance, we have some solutions using the SFS, which is the sequential forward search algorithm for feature selection. But there are some different ways of defining the optimization algorithm we want. Again, I'll skip the details, and if you're interested, we can talk a little bit about this after, okay? And then in order to solve this problem that I just mentioned, what we need is to match the two graphs, the model graph and the input graph, okay? And once we have matched them, we can propagate the labels of the input graph of the model graph onto the input graph, and by doing this, we are able to correctly label the input image. That's the basic idea. As I mentioned to you, we have again a different the topological problem between the two graphs. Okay, and we solve this problem by defining deformed graphs, which are kind of graphs that whose attributes have been deformed based on the matchings that we find, and the optimization algorithm simply look for the best deformed graphs in order to find the best solution for it. Let me show some examples here. Okay. We have applied these to many different image databases that are available, publicly available. For instance, these are results for some images from the Berkeley image segmentation database. Here we have the input image, the oversegmented image by using watershed, and the scribbles provided by the user. Okay. Each color here represents a different label that has been applied in order to create the model graph. And here what we have is the final solution. Once we have matched the model graph and the input graph and propagated the labels to onto the other regions. And these are just simply a different visualization of the result with some transparency, where you can see that the different regions have been correctly identified. Okay. With this kind of approach, we are able to solve different image segmentation problems. For instance, this is the most basic one, the most explored one, which is simply foreground and background. This is a simple, this is a particular case where we have actually two different labels. We have one label for the foreground and one label for the background. As I mentioned to you, a key advantage of our approach is that we don't matter how many labels we have. It's simply a problem of assigning a different number of labels to the model graph. Okay, but it doesn't matter for us. But for the two label case, we are able to, with some simple scribbles, we are able to segment the two regions, and then, for instance, put the foreground object onto different backgrounds or something like this. We are also able to treat some different cases, some difficult cases. For instance, a difficult case that appears in image segmentation is that where you have kind of difficult borders. For instance, where you have few or something like this, kind of small detail and fuzzy detail along the borders. And these are some examples. And also the method is kind of robust in such situations. Okay, as you can see here. And finally, this is a case where many of the proposed methods in the literature, they find some difficulties in order to solve. This is the situation where you have many different labels. For instance, for Graphica, it's a kind of difficult. You have to define, you have to subdivide the problem into a sequence of sub-problems. Finding the first object and the background, and then you reanalyze the background to find a different object, and so on and so forth. You have to decompose a multi-label problem into a series of two-label problems. Okay. For us, it doesn't matter, as I mentioned. We can solve the problem in a single interaction. It's just a matter of defining the different labels you want. For instance, here we have a label for the background, a blue label for the support, and a red label for the cat, and the method is simply able to find all the different regions in a single way. And here what we have, some different applications of the method also for the multi-label case. Okay? Finally, an additional advantage we have in our method is that we may reuse our model. Because remember that what we have in order to solve, what we have created in order to solve the segmentation problem is that we have created a model graph, and this model graph has been matched to the input graph. But we can use this model graph in order to segment other similar images. And that's a key advantage of our method. Please let me show to you a small demo. This is the software running, but I'm going to skip all this here. Okay. Here what we have. Okay. Here is the user defining some different structures of the object, of the model graph, and then the algorithm has been applied to this first image. And now what we have is that by using by a single click of the user in order to put the model onto each image, the algorithm is able to segment all similar images by using the original model. Then the idea is that the user is no longer required to define new scribbles for each image, okay? Because I'm using the original model graph. That's something is a byproduct of our method, actually. And also here what we have, again, is the model graph that has been created to this first element is just simply explored again to all other objects, and we are able to segment all other objects without requiring new intervention of the user. We have a software, an open source software for this. It's available in SourceForge, okay? And I can show it to you, can give it to you the link after, but it's simply by looking for structural image segmentation SourceForge, you would find this page here. And finally, for the last problem that this morning when I was talking about the program and my talk to, I think it was with Christina, just realized that it's a nice way of reusing, and no joke that I just realized that I'm separating you from the lunch, okay? And this is the good way of saying that I should take care of the period that I'm going to explain to you. But okay. This is the last image segmentation problem that I want to mention. Is the situation where we have different structures. They are similar, although they are kind of they may be different. This is an application in zoology, for instance, and I would like to be able to apply the same methodology in order to segment all images. And this is an important issue, for instance, where when we are talking about applications in biology, maybe we don't have one image or two images, but we may have some hundreds of images, of similar images, and we want to segment them, okay? And then we were interested in defining a method where we would be able to analyze the whole set of the images and find automatically all those regions by matching those graphs. We have created a semi-supervised image segmentation approach where what we do is that we take all images at once, we decompose all of them as graphs, and we match all those objects. And actually it turns out that similar objects, similar subparts of the objects into for the different images, they tend to match a lot among each other. That's the basic idea behind the method. Then we can apply graph analysis algorithms like for community detection. This is a kind of typical problem that we find, for instance, in analyzing social networks or something like this. And we are able to find those elements that are matched a lot to each other in the image. And then by segmenting any of the images, for instance, the first image, and by propagating the result of the segmentation of the first image to all the elements for each community, we are able to segment all the whole set. Then this is an approach we have explored, and we are able actually to treat some not hundreds nowadays, but we are getting near to segment hundreds of images by segmenting just one image. Okay. And this is an example where we have all superposed graphs and the communities that have been detected for the different structures. Okay, I'll start the concluding remarks now, and I would like just to talk about two ongoing projects. They are recent projects that we have been working recently. Okay. As I mentioned to you, we have been working, studying some problems for structural pattern recognition and image analysis. I have talked to you a little bit today about our graph-based approach and the spatial relations that we have been exploring in our methods. I talked a bit about the image segmentation, interactive image segmentation method we have developed, and some different applications where we have single and multiple labels, single and multiple images, and also semi-supervised learning of the different methods. Now what we are working in the group, there are some different projects, but two of the main recent projects the first one regards what we call the key graphs. Now the idea is not to use the whole graph, but to use parts of the graphs in order to solve some specific problem. For instance, in order to do object detection in images, okay? Then what we have in such situations is that we have a model of the object that we want to detect, and we have a scene that we want to detect. And the idea is to create not a whole graph for the model, but to identify some subgraphs in the model that would be useful in order to detect the object that we want in the input image. Then we have some, these graphs in the model graph, they form what we call the set of key graphs, okay? It's just analogous to key point detections, for instance, by using SIFT, SURF, or Harris, or whatever. But instead of using points, we are using graphs, small graphs, okay? Then if we are able to match those graphs onto the key graphs that have been extracted from the scene, then we would be able to find subparts that are matched, and ideally, we would be able to find the objects in different poses or something like this in the image. This is the basic idea that has been proposed in the PhD thesis of Marcela Shimoto that has just concluded in our lab. The idea here is to explore, again, spatial relations in order to speed up the method. Yeah, for instance, if I want to find key graphs of size 3, then by matching two graphs, because we have topological and other features from the graphs, for instance, orientation, etc., we are able to divide the search space in the image so that we are kind of focusing where, or if it's a key graph, where it should be. And then it's a way of speeding up the algorithm in order to eliminate many false possibilities. Here I'm just showing an example. If I want to find, for instance, if I start with this key point and I have a second candidate key point, then the third for some specific key graph, it should be searched here. And all this same plane here, I don't need to look for. And these are some examples where we have the key graphs and the object that has been found here. Here what we have is the graph that has been created from the input image and the key graphs that have been matched from the input graph. And here are some examples, some results, okay? Where you have the model image is this cover here. It's a comics cover, I guess, or something like this. And we have the object in some different poses, also with some partial occlusion or something like this. And the algorithm is able to find the key graphs that has been matched. These lines here represent the matched key graphs. And finally, this is the second example I wanted to mention. I just explained it to you, highlight a little bit in the beginning, is that we have to solve those topological difference problem between the graphs. In order to solve this, an evolution of the deformation graph idea has been proposed in the PhD thesis of Ana Graciano, also co-supervised by me and Isabelle Bloch in 2012, where we defined actually the structure, the attributed relational graph. We have modified this idea in order not to have more here only features, but now we have distributions. Actually, we have feature vectors with distributions associated to them. That's the basic idea, and that's what we call statistical relational graphs. Now the idea is to estimate the parameters of such distributions from, for instance, some training images or something like this. And then when we have an input image, we consider the graph that is observed from the input image as an observation graph. And the idea is to find some good observations based on the probability of this observation coming from that distribution. That's the basic idea behind the method. Then we have a situation where we can define a conceptual model, we can estimate the parameters from training images, and then we have a kind of graph that represents sets of probability distributions. And good solutions, for instance, for the image segmentation or something like this, would be obtained by maximizing this probability here, and this has been proposed in the PhD thesis from Anna, as I mentioned. And we have some good results already, even in the presence of noise and so on and so forth. But this is a kind of this is really in early stages, this research. The PhD thesis mainly focused on defining a formal model. Now we are working about finding some good algorithms and some good applications first. Okay. For the results that I have shown today, I am grateful to a number of people that have been working with me a lot. Alexandre Noma and Anna, Charles Yuri, Celina, and Marcelo are former PhD and master students. And then I have Isabelle Bloch, my main collaborator in this research, Consularo, a former colleague, and Olivier Collion. These are some colleagues that have been working more generally in this research. I am grateful for them for the last years, but mainly I am grateful for the students that have been working with me during these years, and that's it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto. So, time for questions we have.
Hi, Roberto, nice work. It seems that the segmentation problem could be greatly simplified if you use some edge-aware filtering, such as some bilateral filtering, right? Because then your graph would have many less regions. Have you explored this? Yeah, by performing some edge-aware filtering, say bilateral filtering, then you would have just a few regions. Therefore, your graph would be much simpler. The matching and everything should be simplified.
You
right?
mean by filtering the input graph, the
image,
model?
Yes, the
input
image. Yeah.
Yes, we can use a lot of different kind of filters in order to do it, but there is a constraint that we cannot lose, and that's the trade-off. We cannot apply a filter. The constraint is that the elements I want to look for in the image should be union of sub-elements in the input image. Then, for instance, if I take the watershed with larger structuring elements, maybe I would have fewer regions, but I would start risking losing the right edges, and that's the trade-off. If you look here, for instance, here, for instance, if the point is that I should have a small number of regions, but not smaller than the necessary. Because if it's necessary, smaller than necessary, maybe I will start losing these edges here, or other edges in other regions. That's the point. There's a trade-off, okay? And it applies to either filter I want to apply. In our situation, what we have explored up to now is that we have concentrated on having some good, fast optimization algorithms, and so that we do not care too much about the number of regions we have here. But I agree with you. If I have fewer regions here, I would have smaller input graphs, and of course
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that with fast bilateral filters, versions you can do this in real time. You could preserve those edges nicely, and I think it would push this, the applications forward. I mean, it would be great.
Okay, that's the nice thing about this approach, at least for me, is that we have some different steps, and of course we can try to optimize or to improve each of the steps separately. I totally agree.
Thanks.
Congrats for the presentation. I think it was very good and very interesting. I have two questions.
Yeah.
You have how to guarantee that your method is adhering to the borders, for example, in this image?
No, the first thing, as I mentioned, is that we should guarantee that the borders they are there. That's the first step. And of course, it depends on the image and the image segmentation method we have created and so on and so forth. And then the second thing is that the cost function should be sensible to such errors. For instance, because if we match a lot of good, if we do a lot of good matchings here in the cost function, and we are wrong in some border regions, the point is that maybe globally the cost function is being optimized, but actually I'm getting wrong in the bad regions, because for human beings, if I am wrong here, it's easier, but if I'm wrong here, we can catch it quite fastly. The way we solve this problem in this situation, there are two ways. The first way is by using some multi-scale approach, where you try to match globally the objects, and then after you can optimize some different regions. For instance, if I optimize just the eye region or something like this, then we tend to improve the accuracy. And the second way is by interaction. I mean, maybe for many applications, just simply a nice way, for instance, when I show the model we use, maybe it's easier just to apply to have some good result, though not perfect, but the user, of course, he or she is not required to do scribbles in every image, and he or she just have to do some small clicks in order to get the final good result.
Second question is, what's the difference between the key graph and the random graph?
You mean random graphs, the theoretical definition of random graphs? Well, random graphs, they are mathematically well defined. They are defined by, you have to have the distribution of the edges, etc., etc. And for the key graphs, what I call key graphs, actually is a way of remembering the idea of key points. If you look in the literature for object detection or something like this, you have the key points approaches like SIFT, SURF, Harris, and so on and so forth. And we are here defining an analogous of the key points, but using graphs instead. That's why what we call key graphs. Actually, there are simply subgraphs with some topology that is defined a priori, and our algorithms, they explore such topology. When I said, when I talked about the constraints, for instance, in order to look for the good key graphs, actually the algorithm tries to explore topology in order to speed up the decision. But they are just simply like this.
But the way that you connected the vertices is the same way that you explained in the beginning?
Yeah, and it depends it depends from the training set, because we define all these a priori. Sorry? No, they're not random. Nothing in the sense of course, we can pick randomly subgraphs in order to see if they are key graphs, and we do. There are two different. That's why I was asking. There's the mathematical concept of a random graph, and there's also the idea of exploring randomly the key graphs that I may find. And we actually do this because we have just simply a combinatorial explosion of possible key graphs. And what we do is to subsample this combinatorial explosion in order to find some good. We don't need to match all key graphs. That's the basic idea. When I'm looking for good matchings like this, let me show. When I'm looking for this object in the scene, I don't have to match all key graphs from the model. Actually, I have to match some key graphs, and if I am glad with the key graphs I have matched, I simply say, well, okay, I'm using this. Actually, we use some stochastic Hopf transforms or Ransack in order to find these key graphs. Then it's random in this sense. We don't match every graph. We just sample the possible key graphs, and if I am able to match some sampled key graphs, I am glad for detection. I think there is.
Thanks. Is there any kind of application to image compression of this kind of graph segmentation based method? Because, for example, for these graphs are essentially planar maps, and the problem of compressing planar maps is very well known. So
I am not aware. I don't know. Because the point here, maybe we can use, I don't know, just brainstorming now here. For this new approach here, what we have is that we will have estimation of the parameters that synthesize the attributes from the image. Maybe it should be, we should also be able to simulate the models and then to reconstruct the image. But I'm simply throwing ideas here now. I don't know.
In the interactive segmentation application, how is the graph technique sensitive to the different scribbles?
We have done a lot of tests about this. We are glad it's kind of robust. We have compared, because there are some protocol experiments in order to compare this with graph cuts, etc., with different scribbles. There are some of the database, I don't remember if the Berkeley or some other, they have image segmentations with some different seeds, etc. And we have compared, and it works quite well. But it's an experimental result. I don't have a formula showing that it's robust or something like this. Experimentally, we are glad with this.
Questions? Roberto, when you have, I didn't understand well actually, when you have similar objects connected to each other, like the two horses that you showed in one of the pictures.
The two?
Horses that you showed in one of the pictures. How does your model disconnect them? I mean, do you need markers close to the boundary, or you actually don't need markers close to the boundary, right?
Yes, these are the results. These are the marks that we have obtained. I really suppose these are the best results my PhD student obtained, and I'm showing the best results he obtained. But this is but yes, these are the marks that have been used. Sometimes what we have is that, for instance, these small markers here, this is an indication that first he made the big scribbles, and then the method got wrong parts here, and then we have the small marks. Like this.
No, what I didn't understand very well is how the model can distinguish, for example, when you go close to the boundary between the horse. How can it distinguish that the regions of the small horse have to be merged together with the green?
The only thing that is sure here is that there are watershed borders here.
Oh yeah,
we are sure about that.
That's true.
We are sure that there are watershed borders here.
But then when you measure the properties of the regions, they are very similar.
Maybe, yeah.
And
it means that although they are similar, it's cheaper for the method, for the optimization algorithm, to map these regions to this model than to map to the other one.
I was just wondering that maybe you're exploiting some kind of distance to the marker. Maybe you're exploiting some kind of distance to the marker. I mean, between the region and the marker.
The coordinates are part of the attributes.
Okay, the coordinates.
Okay. The coordinates, they are part of the attributes. That's why, if you remember the demo that I shown, that's why we need the click. Okay. You remember there was the model we used where the user made the first segmentation, and then Alexandre simply clicked on the other ones. This click provides us a shift in the model, a spatial shift in the model, and it's all we need in order to adapt all the coordinates and so on and so forth.
So in other words, if you have a tie in deciding which marker will take in a region, then that tie is solved by the distance, probably, because of the coordinates.
Actually, it's implicit, because the coordinates, they are part of the attributes, which means that the cost function is taking into account both color, texture, etc., and the position, and spatial position.
But I mean, during the interaction, if it does not solve, so if you see an error, then you should put a new marker close to it.
Yeah. There are some situations, for instance, for medical images, we can explore more complex, and we have explored actually with Isabelle and Olivier Colliot, more complex spatial relations. For instance, symmetry. Mm-hmm. There are in some situations, you know that symmetrically, for instance, the lungs, they should be symmetrical. Then we can use this spatial relation symmetry as an additional
to solve the ties.
Yeah.
And have you thought to use any classifier at the nodes of the model graph?
Here,
or you just
for the last approach I'm just mentioning, actually what we are going to have is that we are going to have statistical distributions of the nodes. Then we can use these for the classifications. We use classifiers actually for the key graphs, but because what we do is that from the model we extract a possibly huge set of key graphs, which represents the model. And then for each input key graph, now I'm not classifying any more whole graphs, but key graphs. What we have to do is a pattern classification where each pattern is a key graph. Now, and actually, I think Marcelo used some key nearest neighbors or something like this. And now we have a new PhD student, Stefan, who is trying to adapt to some SVM or something like this. But it's simply a reduction of path recognition problem, because we want to segment, to classify key graphs.
So great.
A key point is defined as a strong point in the image. How you define your key graph?
We define the topology, and we define key points, and we create key graphs as graphs from the key points. Then first we apply some key point detector, for instance Harris or Sister or something like this. And then we start creating the topology of the graph by defining some topology a priori. We want key graphs with three nodes and the direction. Simply we have to the orientation. This is the simple. There are some additional heuristics we put. For instance, distance. We don't know. We don't want key graphs larger than something and smaller than something. There are some heuristics in order to define this. But it depends on the application.
Any more questions? Okay, so let's thank Roberto.
I'm really grateful for everybody, Luciano, that invited me. Thank you very much.